We're going to use Pear
Yes.
Deck today. If you are an FTE kind of regular, this is nothing new for you. So, oh, and this is a different, I'm sorry, everyone. So I must have,
It's in that tab to the right, Jamie,
oh,
right to
is
the right
it?
of where you are.
There we go. Okay, I was like, how did I mess this up? Okay, so some of you have already connected. So you're going to go on your devices to joinpd.com. And Debbie and I are both going to be using this. So unfortunately, when we swap speakers, you're going to have to go to a new Pear Deck and a new code. But you'll get lots of practice doing that. But should be good. Um, I believe it should save your name if you're logged in, but no big deal. So go ahead and get started. So go to joinpd.com. You can do this on your device, like on your laptop. If you're on a laptop, you can have your phone out. And it's just another way, if you've not done this, it's another way for you to interact with the session and with the slides. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. And then it is up in the code. The code is up on the corner, and we can also right up here in the corner, and we can also put it in the chat, no problem. So welcome to Entrepreneurship, Economics and Innovation. This is pretty brand new curriculum. So many of you are seeing this you guys are all among the first people to see this curriculum. So Debbie and I are very excited to show this for you. Um, we have seen the agenda, but just also wanted to give you guys some presentation if you wanted to reach out, if you want our contact information. So very excited. All right, so the first thing we're going to do, we're on your devices.
Where's the,
Question?
where's the Pear Deck link again? Could you leave that
You
up?
go to joinpd.com on any device, and then you type in LSZEGM. Yes, Richard, beta testers. Timothy, you're not able to do that. And somebody, I think if somebody
I'm
can,
having problems as well.
you're having problems?
Yes.
Did you go to joinpd.com on like your phone or a tablet?
I was trying to go to on my phone
Okay.
in addition to this.
Yep, join PD, like professional development, but it's just the letters pd.com. And if you can't participate in the PD or the join PD, the Pear Deck, it's not
And what's the
gonna,
code again?
it is up in the corner. It's LSZEGM. Okay, and so just kind of to get some practice in, we just wanted to see what grades you teach. So if you can do this, it looks like we have predominantly high school. I love that. Ooh, something else. Want to share what the something else you teach? Oh no, sorry, there's zero that sits on the other. I thought it changed. I thought somebody had put that. All right. And just to get a set feel for what you teach, what subject do you teach? And I believe on this one, you can click more than one because I know many of you are multifaceted, more than one. If you teach something else, please feel free to share what that something else is in the chat, or you can unmute yourself. We can practice that too. Lots of social studies. That's what we thought. Lots of business, economics. I love it. Some entrepreneurship. Awesome.
I teach family consumer sciences, and I teach an independent living class that has a financial literacy component.
Okay. I think you're going to have some good stuff that you'll be able to implement from this content. Some math classes. Oh, I love that. You'll be doing some math stuff in this curriculum as well. All right. So let's just go ahead and get started. Please feel free to unmute yourself. I'll try to kind of maintain the chat. I know that Lisa's kind of looking at it too. So if it gets kind of going and I miss something, she'll interrupt me, but you all can also interrupt me. So we're going to kind of start off and just talk about the foundations for an entrepreneur. So what is economics? So unmute yourself, put it in the chat. What is economics? I can't start a session without this. I always have to start this one. Study of finances, decision making with scarce resources. I like that. Study of scarcity, right? Our students, do they often think like, oh, it's stocks and bonds, it's money, right? Every time I tell somebody I'm an economist, they first they go, ugh, I hated economics. And then they go things like, well, what's going to happen to the stock market or what's going to happen to interest rates? And it's like, I have no idea. I'm just a regular old person, you know. But economics, so a lot of times people think economics is this complicated subject. I think it's kind of, a lot of people are fearful of it, but it boils down to something so simple as it's the study of choices. Okay. A lot of you put in study of choices and scarce resources. Great. I love that. But it's just something so simple as a study of choices. And our students are constantly making choices. And then we're going to expand this more to entrepreneurship. So the whole idea of this curriculum is that it's going to focus on, the choices that an entrepreneur makes and the use of economics to help them make those decisions. If you've ever talked to entrepreneurs, they learn a lot through the school of hard knocks, and they're like, I wish I would have known X, or I wish I would have known this. And so to me, that's kind of the goal of this curriculum and the goal of these classes is to help them, have less school of hard knocks learning. So going through that. So what is an entrepreneur? And we can define it, and this is defined by the St. Louis Fed. If you've ever seen their glossary for economic and personal finance terms, they have a really great kind of a dictionary for econ and financial literacy. And so I pulled this straight from them. I didn't kind of create this, but an entrepreneur is an individual who uses economic resources and creates new products or a new business, bearing most of the risks and enjoying most of the rewards. So that's kind of the idea of what we're going to focus on with the entrepreneur. It's a decision maker. And it's a decision maker where they're going to be under some interesting and different kind of decision making and incentive structures. All right. So what I'm going to have you do is, and I'm going to give you a little more than a minute just because of how it is. I'm going to have you go into breakout rooms. And Lisa, I don't know if I don't know if oh, I can make breakout rooms. Lisa, were you able to make the breakout rooms? I wasn't quite sure.
No, I was not, but
Okay,
you are a co-host now.
I will do it right now.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to put you into 8 breakout rooms because we're going to go back and forth in these breakout rooms. But what you're going to do is you're going to have 1 minute to write down as many entrepreneurs as you can. Okay, do you all understand the rules of the game? Write down as many entrepreneurs. So I'm probably just going to give you about 2 minutes. So it's going to be really, really short. So, all right, I'm going to put you in the breakout rooms. I'm going to open them, go, and then I'll give you about 2 minutes. All right, y'all should be able to join. So think of as many entrepreneurs, write down on a piece of paper, as many entrepreneurs as you can. We'll move back and forth in these rooms a couple times today. Pamela, Varun, are you able to get into your breakout room? Varun, are you able to get to your breakout room?
Varun might have had to step away for a minute.
Okay. That's fine. I can keep these breakout rooms, right? Like we can go back and forth they should be all created, right?
Yeah, if you keep them,
Okay.
the next time you send them, it'll auto pull up the same room.
Okay. I thought they were, but I haven't used the breakout rooms in a while at this point.
I actually won't be using Pear Deck today because I'm using Google Slides and Google.
Oh, okay.
And so it's just too many you could see how even just getting into Pear Deck is, I'll just give them one task each thing.
Well, they're gonna have to do Google Slides with me on the next, actually, I think today, right? This one, yeah.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Well, apologies for that rough start, I felt like.
My
got
apologies
thrown by-
for making you start 10 minutes early. I was just thinking 8:30.
Yes, well, no, and I was like, oh gosh, I must have not paid attention to the time. And so when I let him in, then I was like, oh wait, we're a little early. And then I was
All right,
completely
I'm
thrown
gonna
off
bring him
after
back.
that.
I'm gonna bring him back.
Okay.
We have someone in the waiting room too.
All right, welcome back, everyone. Hope you had some good conversations. You got 30 seconds. And we'll bring everyone back. People are hanging on to the last minute to try to get in their list of entrepreneurs. All right, we should have breakout rooms, or everyone's back from their breakout rooms. Okay, so what I would like you to do is I would like you just to unmute yourself, and we're gonna kind of do this. It's gonna be a little chaotic, so just bear with me. What I would normally do is I'd have them in groups of 3 or 4 around the classroom, and I would have each group, I would say, name a entrepreneur that you talked about, and they would have to go around without repeating, and we're gonna see like how many we can do. So we're not going to be able to do that kind of in this way. So we'll do it a little more chaotic. So you can just unmute yourself and share an entrepreneur that you talked about, or just a list of an entrepreneur. You don't have to like share what they are, just kind of shout out a name. So I'm going
Okay,
to say
Jeff
go.
Bezos,
Oh, Jeff Bezos.
Mark
You
Zuckerberg,
bet.
Walton.
Sam Walton.
Anybody with an LLC.
The Menards guy from Menards.
yeah,
Okay.
Barry Gordy,
Yeah, we're looking back.
Madam
in
C.J.
history.
Walker.
Madam
Very
C.J.
good.
Walker, yes.
Yes.
Michael
How about
Bloomberg.
Michael Bloomberg.
Barry Gordy, yeah, Bloomberg.
Carnegie, Ford, Edison, the older guys.
Oh, yeah.
Sarah
Ted Turner.
Harry
Yeah.
Blakely.
Anybody with an
Russell
LLC,
Simmons.
any small business owner.
Oh, Theodore,
Oh,
yeah.
Bryant.
Get down the street who cuts my lawn, Darren.
Rockefeller.
Rockefeller, yeah.
Yeah.
Ford.
House, Starbucks, Howard Schultz.
Oh, yeah.
Henry Ford.
We use
Henry
Starbucks,
Ford.
right?
I like the historical
Daughter
examples too.
Aaliyah.
Yep.
Yeah, we look back at that.
Someone in our group said, anyone with a side hustle. And I think that was a great reference because for my kids, they know people who have side hustles and immediately say, that's an entrepreneur. That little tiny phrase really helped.
Debbie or
And-
Deborah, excuse me.
Yeah.
I am gonna. You just did that perfectly. It's like you're doing this. So you know the things that we think about, and most of the time your students are gonna say things like exactly who you all said, right? You came up with Jeff Bezos,
Theodore.
Steve Jobs, Rihanna, Taylor Swift. Like you're gonna come up with these big names. However, the goal of this is that entrepreneurship is so much more than these celebrities and so much more than these big names. And they're more involved in your community than you think. So farmers, I'm from Nebraska. I'm a professor at the University of Nebraska at Omaha, and we got a lot of entrepreneurs, right? I'm sure a lot of you are in rural areas too. Has anyone ever eaten at a food truck? Entrepreneurs, right? Or just in general, restaurants, coffee shop owners.
Oh, yeah.
Gas station owners.
Gas station owners, yeah, but or a boutique. Does anyone know somebody who owns or runs their own boutique? How about a dentist? A lot of dentists are entrepreneurs where they own their own practice and they become their entrepreneur. My children go to an at-home daycare, which means that woman is a entrepreneur. So I want the goal of this. I could see some of your reactions. You're like, oh yeah, is to get students to really think like entrepreneurship is so huge and it is so much bigger than, than these massive companies, right? It's not just Rockefeller, it's not just these sort of things, right? And that's the goal, like that's kind of the entire goal of this curriculum. And we'll build upon this kind of throughout it. So here's what I'm going to have you do. Okay. And I should be able to, I'll be able to project this into your breakout rooms if you can't read it. But in your groups, I'm going to have you list 3 products or services you no longer purchase now, but you were purchasing 3 years ago. And use 3 years loosely. If it's 3.5 or 4 years, that's fine. But we're going to kind of keep it short, right? So purchase things you were purchasing, you are no longer purchasing, but you were purchasing 3 years ago. How about things that you are purchasing now that you were not purchasing 3 years ago? Okay. So I'm going to put you back in your breakout rooms. I'm going to be able to, I'll be able to project this into your rooms for you all to talk about. So, all right. I am going to open the rooms. And I should be able to, yep, share to breakout rooms. Chris, do you need help getting to your breakout room? David, do you need help getting to your breakout room?
You're muted, David.
Unmute myself. I don't know. It just switched me out. I don't know what I
Alright.
did. I don't think I left.
I'm gonna
I was there a minute ago. I was listening to Emily tell me about how she couldn't have her camera on because she was in the mountains. And
if you go to, I think if you go to more, you should be able to say go back to your breakout room.
go back to breakout room. Okay. Meeting info. Go back to breakout room.
It should say something along those lines. Otherwise, I can move you to a brand new room.
Oh gosh, what did I do?
I'll just move you to a new room. It's all right. You'll make new friends.
Okay, that's fine.
Hopefully that helps. Did you get a prompt?
Yes.
Okay.
Not sure what I did again. Let me see if I can. Let me go to more. Okay. Participants, it says chat, react, all comparison, record, captions, join breakout room. Okay, room array, join breakout.
All right. Take 3. Hopefully this works. Do either of you know how it should be easy for them to find which breakout room number they're in, right? Like it should
Yeah,
be.
it says it at the top when they're in there.
Okay. I was like, I thought it was, but I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, because they're gonna have to do the slide. I'm gonna do your trick of your slides.
Yeah.
Um,
So I found a puzzle extension for Google. So I like went
Cool.
over and over trying to find a puzzle tool that where they could collaborate on a puzzle in a breakout room.
Wow.
And I found a tool that will take any picture and turn it into a puzzle. I had to pay $6.95, but I was like, it's worth it. I can't make my own shapes, you know? But
Oh, that's great.
it's a
I can't
subscription.
believe you did
I
that.
just have to remember to cancel it tomorrow. But the image I just did white because it's an upside down puzzle, you know?
Oh, that's a great idea.
So we'll see if it works.
That is a great idea.
Do you remember how much time you gave for the puzzle station?
They're all like 5 minutes, or they're all short because they're supposed to be moving from room to like time to time.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was like 3 minutes because they're not supposed to finish it.
Yeah, I think I'll give them 3. It's only 25 pages or 25 pieces.
But all white. That's a great idea. Clever.
Yeah.
I was just glad somebody had invented a tool for it.
Hmm.
I have figured out what the problem is.
Oh
It
yeah.
has this little screen that says, everything that you're doing on this is being recorded and such and I click on got it, it kicks me out.
Oh,
Then I click on the X to X out the box so that I don't see that on my screen because it kind of covers up the workspace. So I click on the X and it kicks me out. So I can't figure out why, but anyway, I'm going to go back in. Here we go.
Oh, we're bringing you back, David, so don't go back
Okay,
in.
good. That's good. All right. Okay. Oh, yeah. Well, where'd I go now? There we go.
All right. Everyone has been like moving through Zoom space and time. It's like time traveling here.
I love entrepreneurship. I used to work for Marilyn Kurilski at UCLA, and we used to do mini society program through you and Marion Kaufman for years. I did that for over 17 years, and I loved it to death. And anytime I get a chance to do that with my kids at school, I do that. I love it today, and I don't know why it's gone away, but I do. But it's kind of sad because all that is still just as relevant as it ever has been.
Yeah.
So,
all right, everyone. So welcome back. What sort of things did you talk about? Name a product or a service that you no longer purchase, but you were purchasing 3 years ago?
Cable TV.
Face mask.
Oh, cable. Yeah, that's a good one. And did you only cut it 3 years
cable.
ago? I cut that a while ago.
Oh,
Disney Plus.
Disney Plus. Oh, you were why aren't you purchasing it anymore?
We had watched everything that we wanted to watch on there, so we swapped it out for something different.
Okay. Could maybe somebody
I'm still
got
addicted.
rid of you're still addicted. Maybe somebody got rid of Disney Plus because 3 years ago their kids were little and now they are teenagers. Is that a reason too? Yeah, absolutely.
Movie
Give me something
tickets.
else. Movie tickets. Yeah, because
Yeah.
everything streams like 2 months later.
Yeah.
Somebody in my group said
Because of the
investment.
giant TVs we can buy and because of the deals that movie theaters or movie studios make with the streaming service to bring it to us that fast, there's not even enough time. We used to even have second run theaters where you could buy, and it wasn't a fresh movie, but they'd have like 5 or 6 second run movies.
Yeah.
You'd bring your kids to those on the
For
weekends
$1.
and stuff for $1.
Yep.
And the second runs went away. And then all of a sudden the first runs are going away because there's only 15 to 30 days. There was just an ad in the other day on the article on the other day on the internet about that the movie studios and the streaming places are the movie theaters are trying to make the studios bow to at least 45 days to give them more breathing room instead of the current like 30 days.
Wow.
Wow.
All right, what else did you talk about? I think Simona, you were going to say
I want
something.
to say that somebody in my group said crypto, so investment, right? People switch to this new way of investing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I switched to Panera because I learned finally how to cook. So I'm not going to Panera anymore.
Oh, okay. All right. How about we're going to talk about things that you purchase now, but you were not purchasing 3 years ago?
Wireless earbuds.
Subscription services.
Yeah, why not?
Like Spotify.
Why weren't you purchasing it 3 years ago?
Not me, it's my kids. My kids are older now, so they purchase Spotify, so it goes right on my credit card.
Yep. Yeah. Or some subscriptions didn't exist. They literally didn't exist 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Right? Those sort of things. Why does this matter for entrepreneurs? Like, why do this sort of discussion matter?
Well, they have to look into the future and be ready for what we will want in the future and kind of have a ready.
The market is always changing.
Markets are changing.
Yeah.
And
entrepreneurs look at trends. So if the trends are changing, they need to change with them.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Or start
And-
the trends.
Or start the
start the
trends. Yeah, that's a great
Start the
idea.
trend, yeah.
Like I was
Yeah.
thinking about food delivery service. How many ads do we get on when we're playing our games online on our phones that we get a thing for this food process or this wild Alaskan seafood or fresh
Yeah.
factor, something you
Yep.
don't have to cook, something you don't have to do, but it's still good for you. So you
Yeah.
battle price versus health.
So entrepreneurs need to think about these sort of things.
Easy
All
foods.
right. So we're going to go back to our breakout rooms, I believe one more time. I'm not going to give you the full 5 minutes. But what you're going to do, and I'm going to put this in the chat as well, this, putting this in the chat, the Google document. So there is, so in your breakout rooms, you're going to be talking about a specific industry. And I've given you a Google slide with 8 different industries on it, and you'll have 8 different rooms. So if you're in breakout group 2, you need to go to slide 2. Okay, does that make sense? So your breakout room 4, you go to 4. In your groups, you need to identify 2 to 3 problems within that industry, and you need to create a solution to at least one of those problems as a business. And then be prepared to share those. Okay. And I will, you have a link. You can also go to that tiny URL, that tiny.cc link that goes to the same place. So you can use either link. I will put this up. I will project this into your breakout room so you can have that conversation. All right. So I'm going to put you into breakout rooms one more time. All right. So you did not get enough time to talk, and I know that that's kind of we're kind of rushing you on this sort of stuff, but just to give you a taste of what's going on. So I would like to hear, how about food service? Who is in group for that talked about food service? What did you talk about that were a problem within that industry?
We talk about food waste. So that's number one problem. And then we talk also about the different, because it's a culture thing, because let's say in Japan, at the end of the day, excess foods are already given almost 90% free or given away. But here in the US, it's a different culture that you cannot give away food because something happened to that person. It is the liability. So
Yeah.
that's what we talk about our food services.
Did you come up with a solution to this problem? Was this one of the, I mean, you didn't have to come up for every problem, but did you have a solution for this?
I think we spoke about a place or an app in Texas where at the end of the night or like in an odd hour, some restaurants that partner with this application sort of sell their leftover meals or food items at half price or at a discount. But it's at the end of the
There you
day,
go.
so they're not like in major loss, but they're being more mindful about the way in which they get rid of old food or food that they prepared fresh at the beginning of the day.
Yeah, gotcha.
There's something that
Oh,
they do at our school that deals with food waste, so kids don't always eat their apples or they don't always eat their milk, drink their milk. They'll lay it out on a table. We have like a little table tray, and kids that want an extra apple or want an extra milk or want some extra carrots or whatever in the little bag, they'll go by there and they'll pick those up,
that's a
whereas
great
everybody
idea.
gets the same thing. And so that's a very good idea to, kind of mitigate a little of that. It doesn't keep them from wasting stuff. Kids, they're going to waste whatever they want to waste. But it does, it promotes, I think, sharing and keeping an idea out there. Well, hey, I'm not going to eat this. I'd rather give it to somebody else. And, so.
Yeah. So going back to the business idea of the app that was in Texas and, that sort of thing. Anybody not in that group or, whatever, what do you have a problem? Like, do you notice any problems with that? Or do you foresee that there could be any issues with that business?
With the business of using leftover food, you mean, right?
Yeah, so the
Yeah.
issue is that there's food waste. So one of the solutions is maybe there's an app that these businesses or these restaurants can get on, and then they can sell their food for half price at whatever time it is, end of the day,
Mhm.
at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, whatever it is. So with every business, right, we identify a problem, we try to solve it, but there's going to be an issue with it. So are there any issues that you can see?
Liability. I mean,
Okay.
Right.
liabilities. I mean,
Yeah.
food
Health
poisoning. Who's
department,
liable
after
for
8
that?
hours, it's in a critical zone, you gotta throw it out.
Okay.
Mhm.
So maybe there's some issues there. So now what we could do is, okay, so maybe there's some liability issues. I think the three of you kind of mentioned that with food waste and things like that. So now we tweak the app that, the food has to be within X amount of hours, right? So the idea behind this, the idea behind this is that entrepreneurship has to accept feedback, right? There's a lot of feedback that goes through there. So in your classrooms, what you would do is you would have these students kind of work in these groups to share out these issues, share out the solutions, and then you would have the group kind of as a whole group talk about problems. And then you would want the students to go back to their original groups and kind of retweak that business, right? Do you see how this feedback loop is kind of coming in, and that they're taking things and they're adjusting things? So at the university, I think students are really bad about revising their work. I don't know if you noticed that at the high school level or beyond. It's like they write a draft of a paper and they're like, well, this is it. And you're like, well, no. We revise these things. But that's something that entrepreneurs have to get accustomed to, because they're going to come up with this great idea. There's inevitably going to be problems, and then they're going to have to take that feedback and adjust, right? There's that flexibility. So this is a way just to kind of get them into that brainstorming kind of thought process. So just kind of some definitions. Entrepreneurs can be either inventors, innovators, or both, right? And just kind of the difference between that invention versus innovation. Invention is kind of that brand new idea, where innovation is tweaking it, right? The invention was the round wheel. The innovation is putting rubber around it, right? That sort of thing. And I like this image to talking through this is, I think there's a lot of misconceptions when we have increased population. We talk about scarcity of resources and stuff like that. But when we have an increased population, we have increased ideas, increased thoughts, increased diversity. And because of those things, we have these really amazing thought processes that come out. So, as we have more population, we have more ideas, and we're bringing that in there. And we talk about driving innovation as, I've heard the phrase, necessity is the mother of all invention, right? And when you have more people, there might be more reasons to be innovative. You have to be more innovative with the resources that you have. And so they are going to figure out different ways to take care of these resources. So just kind of an interesting graphic that I like to show with my students. So thinking about this, and this was really like, this lesson is really just to get the taste of entrepreneurship. We're just going to talk a little bit about what entrepreneurship is, get them kind of excited, get the students to think about what's the point of this, right? And thinking about entrepreneurs use economics all the time. Economics is so important to entrepreneurs because they have to make choices about their business, pricing decisions, how to spend their time, should they hire workers, how are they going to get financing. So we'll talk, you're only going to see a brief bit of this curriculum. You only see a small snapshot, but we're going to show you the bigger picture at the very end of this. But so every lesson is designed to kind of move the entrepreneurship experience forward and move the thought process and the decision making that they're going to have to do.
Not going to use Pear Deck because I'm going to have you jumping in and out of some shared Google slides. So we'll keep the tech apps to a minimum. Let me share my screen here. Okay, everything look okay, Jamie? All right. Make all you guys bigger. All right, so we're going to do a self-assessment, an entrepreneurial self-assessment. And, but before we do that, in the Zoom chat, I want you to give me some characteristics that you think of when you hear the word entrepreneur or entrepreneurship. Go ahead and put those in the Zoom chat. creative, risk taker, self-motivated, brave, outside of the box, innovator, drive, critical thinker, hard worker, self-made, money motivated, driven, leadership, vision, creative. You guys are awesome. Okay, self-employed, they step out of their comfort zone. Let's see, idealist, doesn't give up, patient, ethical, hard worker, leader, self-made. Okay, no is not yet. Yeah, they don't take no for, they don't just quit forever. They are persistent, intuitive leadership, all in, resilience. I like that word. Okay, great words. So we're going to do a self-assessment. I'm going to put a link in. Oh, I forgot to give you guys, we're going to pause right here. I'm going to give everybody 2 minutes to go grab a writing utensil and let's say like 3 pieces of scratch paper you'll need for this session. Okay. So go grab a writing utensil and some paper that you can draw on. Okay. Sticky notes, computer paper, whatever you can find. Worst case scenario, you could use your notes app, but you are going to want to be able to draw later in the lesson. So something you could draw on. Give you 1 more minute to grab a writing utensil and some scratch paper. Okay, in the Zoom chat, I just put a link to a self-assessment. And so I want you to read through those questions. It's going to look like this. And then you're going to just on your scratch paper, keep score. 5 if you strongly agree, all the way down to 1 would be strongly disagree with each of those statements. And then you're going to add them up and there'll be a score at the end. Okay, so take 3 to 5 minutes. We'll see how long it takes you to do this little self-assessment. Just getting back with some scratch paper and a pen or pencil. Go ahead and complete the self-assessment. It's displayed on my screen. There's also a link to it if you want to make it bigger in the Zoom chat.
Debbie, could you scroll down to the bottom part of this quiz? Thank you.
Now, once you're done, go ahead and do what others are doing. Put your score in the chat, then I'll know you're done.
Jeff, I like your Gumby picture.
Thanks.
I'll give you 30 more seconds to finish that up. Okay, you can see from the document, this comes from the Kansas City Federal Reserve Bank. And we thought it was a good tool, easy to use, easy to, accessible for students. And so which entrepreneurial traits did you excel in? And can you give some examples where you've demonstrated those strengths? Go ahead and use the raise your hand emoji if you can, some of those stood out to you and you're like, yeah, I use those here's where I use those in my life. Go ahead, Timothy.
Sorry, I was muted. So I think I kind of excel in decision making, and I thought I was, people can depend on me. I was a little bit less risky, and I know like being a risk taker is exactly like when it makes or breaks in entrepreneurship. We all have our own levels of risk, what we're willing to take and invest. But I think I'm a little less risk taking or risk taking adverse than the average bear. So maybe that's an issue there.
Sharon, go ahead.
Sorry, I always have a hard time finding the unmute. I tend to like to do things that are high performance, and anything that I'm charged with whether I like it or not, I finish it and do the best I can on it. But I really didn't like a lot of the things that is part of being an entrepreneur. I think as a teacher, most of us probably do work 50 hours plus a week, not necessarily liking it, but it's something that we have to do. Probably if I had my choice, I wouldn't want to do that.
Okay, and let's hear one more, Frank.
Yeah, I agree with Stephen, who says it has a lot to do with age. It's a lot different when you're 20 than when you're like me, old as dirt and ready to go, but the one thing I think that I have is that I put a 5 down there was that people trust me and consider me to be honest and reliable. So when I talk about product, or I talk about a service, or I talk about something I'm interested in, I'm a whole hog, and they see it on my sleeve and they believe me and they want to get a part of it.
Yeah. Any areas that you saw as potential challenges and maybe how that's affected you in the past? Go ahead, Simona.
Oh, it was not necessary, but yeah, I find challenges. I can do things in crazy situation. An example was that I couldn't find a job in US. I find in working overnight in Bermuda, and then I find a part-time job working online. So I was working all night, and then in the morning I work another 6 hours. So I knew I have to make this. That was in 2010. Was was really hiring for teacher was very low. So yeah, I don't know. I make it happen somehow in crazy situations. So yeah,
Okay.
I always see somehow a window. I guess that's my.
Eric, how about you?
I would also say, yeah, I'm not really much of a risk taker. Like my brain tells me that, when I have extra income, I should probably invest more of it. Instead, I, will put like extra payments toward my mortgage, even though I know like the numbers wise of that doesn't make sense. But I'm so adverse to like debt and risk that I do it anyways, even though like financially, I know it doesn't make the best sense.
Yeah. Okay, let's do, give me a reaction, some sort of reaction if you were surprised by your results. Let's do, if you were surprised if they were higher than you expected. Give me a reaction if your results were higher than you expected. Okay, a few. Anybody, your results were lower than you expected. Give me another reaction if they were lower than you expected.
Hey, Debbie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always thought when I was 20, I wanted to be a millionaire. Then at 40, I just want to pay my bills and vacation and see my daughters. So it's totally different, age.
Yeah, I always say that I am not entrepreneurial. I'm risk averse. But when I did this assessment, I was surprised at that I scored higher than I did. And I realized how many of those traits are things that we take on as teachers. So even if we might not be entrepreneurial in the outside world, I realized I had to be a driver and creative and, reliable and work hard to make things successful in my classroom. And so
I was a chef and I wanted to be in the kitchen. I just need a steady paycheck and know my bills. I could not work on tips.
Okay, so this self-assessment, might be good for students when to help them reflect on maybe areas where they could work on or talents they already have that they could build on. So we're going to do this first activity. I'm going to have, we're going to do just a sample. So this next part of the activity, your students in a regular classroom, you would put your students into groups, maybe just depending on the, like 5 groups would be ideal because there's going to be 5 stations set up around the classroom. Now, we have 4 of these that we're going to do here. That I've been able to kind of recreate virtually, but instead of working in teams, a couple of them will go into teams. For this first one, we're just going to do it all together. And so you'll need a pencil and a piece of paper. And we call this station blind drawing. And so the instructions you would give your students would be to pair up. And one person is going to give instructions. They're going to be looking at an image and they're going to give instructions. And the other person has to draw it based on those instructions. Okay. So what I need from one of you is a volunteer that would be willing to describe the drawing for all of us to draw. Okay, Deborah, I'm going to send you a chat. Let me send it to just Deborah. Okay, so this link I sent you, Deborah, go ahead and click on that. You're going to see an image. Do you see that? Give me a thumbs up when you can see the image. Thumbs up. Okay. Deborah, unmute your microphone and you kind of
got it.
Perfect. And everybody, so Deborah, you're going to just start describing the drawing. Let me go through these instructions to make sure I don't miss anything. You'll give verbal instructions to all of us with, let's see, without looking at the image. You can't really face away from us. You're going to have 2 minutes. And then if they were partnered up, you would switch them and they would have another drawing. But Deborah's going to go ahead and start describing, and I want you all to draw. Okay, go, Deborah.
Okay, so with your dominant hand, you're going to hold your writing implement. With your non-dominant hand, I want you to make a fist and put it on the kind of the edge of your landscape piece of paper. So you have it laid out landscape. I want you to take your writing implement and I want you to draw around your fist, kind of like in a circle, and maybe lift up your wrist a little bit so you can maybe make that circle. So with your writing implement, let's imagine you've got that circle there. And then right above your knuckles, I want you to make 2 lines that are coming out the top, like maybe antenna. So you've got those, and you can put a little decoration on those as you've got that straight line for your little antenna. Before you lift up that non-dominant hand, I want you to peek that ink pen or that pencil right under maybe where your baby knuckle is, and make maybe like a little eyeball in there. So maybe you feel that little line underneath that knuckle. And then I want you to lift up your wrist a little bit with your writing implement on, take right where the base of your hand would be. And you're going to make a little hook, maybe like a smile. What? I'm thinking you're visualizing what I've got now. So with your non-dominant hand, you still have it on your piece of paper. I want you to lift up and move it about halfway, maybe a half an inch or 2 inches. No, that didn't seem right. 1 inch. With your fist still on the paper and your writing implement, you're going to make another circle around that palm, fist. Lift it up again and move that 1 inch to the right or the left, whichever one, because you're directional with your non-dominant and dominant hand. You're going to move it again and circle another time around that fist. Now, you probably are seeing what's going on. It feels like you've got 3 big circles in a row. Yes, you are correct. And one more time to make it good. Lift that fist up, bump it over about that inch, set it back down again. And that last writing implement, I want you to take and make that imaginary circle around that fist. So I think you can open up your eyes, or maybe just imagine, do you think that you made circle, 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 circle?
Okay, time's up. Good job, Deborah. All right, I want you guys to hold your pictures up to the camera so we can see all of your pictures. I'm going to stop sharing so you can see everybody's pictures. And hold them really close to the camera.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh,
I see.
Yes.
Interesting.
Hey, it's good for the first try.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, I'm going to show you what the image looked like that Deborah was describing. If I can get this onto the right page here. Come on.
So it's this and drawing around.
Okay, I'm going to screen share again. There we go. All right, screen share. I got lost with all the instructions. Somebody's, I think it was Kurt. I saw his face. It was hilarious. Well, so now you can see Kurt if your image looks anything like this, like a little caterpillar.
Yeah, see? Move.
So there's 2 images and the students would take turns doing this. And what do you think this station tests? Or what are, some skills that this maybe highlights?
Listening skills.
Listening.
Vision.
What else?
Like envisioning.
Envisioning.
Or like imagination.
Imagination.
Following instruction. That's
following instructions.
Common vocabulary that's understood.
And communication. And the students, do you think that both students in a team that would be doing this and switching roles would be equally good at both tasks?
No.
Probably not. You might have one that's a better communicator, one that might be a little better at drawing, but they're going to discover something about themselves. Okay, we're going to go to the next station. As the students are rotating through these different stations, you would have them put everything back, kind of reset the station. So there would be handouts that they would have been using and looking at to draw, and they would put those back at the table. The instructions would also be there at the station. This next station is what we call puzzled, and we are going to be going into breakout rooms. Let me get the team slide. Let me get back to my links here. So when you go into a breakout room, you're going to go to the same slide that matches your breakout room number. So here's the document coming in the chat. Go ahead and click on that. Your job, this is a puzzle that is face down. So your job is to complete the puzzle face down. Now in live class, you would tell them not to turn it over and peek. Here, that's just not possible. And it looks like this. So when you go to the slides, it drops everybody on slide 1, but don't move it yet. You're gonna move to the slide that matches your breakout number, and you will have 3 minutes to complete it. Don't move them yet. Whoever's highlighting those, you're helping team 1 and you might not be in team 1. And you want to try to complete this puzzle, as much of the puzzle as you can, in 3 minutes. Okay, breakout rooms. I think we'll do 5 in a room here. Let me recreate. All right, ready? Watch, set. Oh, let me make sure I have the right number. Yeah, go. Okay, welcome back, everybody. Oh, I am still sharing my screen. Okay, the next station is called cooperative counting. And so when you go into your breakout room this time, now in the classroom, the students would be moving with the same group to all the stations. So I am gonna, I think I'll keep you I'll keep you in the same group, just so it'll be like the way it would be in the classroom. And your group must count to the number equal to the participants there are. So if there's 6 students in your group, then you have to count to 6. One participant is going to begin by saying 1, and then another participant can then say the number 2. If any participant says a number at the same time, the group must start over. You must start over at 1. You're not allowed to talk or strategize, and you must keep your eyes closed and the entire time. If you complete this station, once you complete it, just stay quietly until I pull you back from the breakout room. Okay? Any questions? All right, I'm going to return you to the breakout rooms. I'll leave these instructions in the breakout room. When you're ready to start, no strategizing, just, once everybody's in there, close your eyes and try to get all the way to 6. If 2 people say a number at the same time, you got to start over at 1. Okay. It looks like, go ahead.
How will you know how many people are in your breakout room if you have to close your eyes?
When you get in there, you'll see all the people that are there. You know what? I actually reset these rooms. I forgot. I put 11 in each room. So you're going to be counting to 11.
Wow.
Okay, here we go. Okay, welcome back, everybody. The last station that we're going to do, that I'll show you, is called Innovation Unleashed. And as a group, you're going to look at an abstract black and white piece of art, and you're going to use colored pencils. In the classroom, you would use colored pencils to draw on the paper. You don't want to alter the image in any other way other than coloring and drawing on the image. Then you're going to create the product name and a brief description of what the product does. Use the sheet of paper with the image on it to be creative and add the product name and description on that piece of paper. Okay, so for this one, since we're up against time, I'm just going to show you the slides I would have sent you to. So some team, so this is one of the images. This is another image. And I would have rotated between the groups, as you were there, you would have taken one of these images. Now, here, our drawing abilities are limited in Google Slides, and Google has gotten rid of Jamboard, a collaborative whiteboard kind of tool that they used to have. So you may have available, collaborative whiteboards in a classroom, Google Classroom, or something like that if you wanted to do this virtually. But students are well. Let me ask you, what skills do you think this station would challenge you on?
Organization.
Organization. Okay. Any others?
Trust.
Sorry.
Process. Lisa, what did you say?
Color selection.
Color selection. Okay.
Selection. They said that there are certain combinations of colors that denote luxury, etc. So possibly that.
Okay, interesting. And colors that look good together and colors that don't look good together. Creativity, Mary and Juvie said in the chat also. How about we talked about the blind drawing and how that kind of featured collaboration and communication skills. What about the face down puzzle?
Well, I think communication was the main thing.
Okay.
And then I think once we got idea to do the corner first,
okay,
it was easier.
Somebody said visual, spatial, teamwork. Timothy, what do you want to add to that one? Oh, you're on mute, Timothy.
There, sorry. There wasn't much communication with our group. We just kind of all went to work. We know what a puzzle is supposed to look like, and we picked out the corners, and then we just started sorting the problems, and we were able to complete it. And I don't think we even said a word to each other.
Wow. Okay.
Where I think in this one, clearly there's going to be communication, and then the last one, the same thing when you're talking about counting, the collaborative counting.
Yeah.
Kind of trusting each other and not trying to take up too much space, but also be part of contributing to the group. And it's hard to know when to start, when to stop, and.
Yeah, speaking of the collaborative counting, how high did any group make it all the way to 11? Rosemary's group did it. I see some
Our group did it.
Yeah, we did.
I think we went up to 11.
Okay. What would have made it easier to get to 11?
Knowing the voices, and then once we kind of figured out the voice and the number, we waited to our turn.
Okay.
But it took a few tries, it wasn't from the beginning.
Maybe having your eyes open. Oh, Sharon said turning on her audio. Yeah. Juvie's group only had to get to 7. It took Melissa's group several tries. But if they'd been able to see each other, that would have helped. So maybe some flexibility and changing the rules. That's one thing that entrepreneurs do. They ask those kind of questions like, why do we have to conform to this, rule? Maybe it's custom or tradition that we've done it this way. Maybe there's another way to do it. So maybe allowing some flexibility there. So there's another station that also looks at risk. Now, when you guys did this activity, we just randomly put the groups together. But do you think there could have been some strategy involved if you had known these tasks ahead of time in building a team that would have allowed you to be successful at all of the categories, all of the stations?
Yeah, I think building a team is important because at the beginning you don't know who's in your team, and that's your trial period. But then once you either shape your team, they learn how to communicate, then it's kind of smoothen up the process.
Yeah, and that's one thing that entrepreneurs do, right? They don't know everything, and but they know how to gather the resources, right? To gather the things that they need, the human and labor resources that will have the right talents to be able to complete a task successfully. So you probably saw some similarities between people in your group and some differences, things that people did better at. So, okay, we talked about these. I think we hit all of these. Which station do you think was the hardest?
The puzzle.
The puzzle?
Yeah.
Definitely. That was adversity. That was another thing that maybe came out of that. And that's something that entrepreneurs face is adversity. And can you see something through to the end? All right. So we're going to take a break.
Where we're going to go with this is kind of talking about we've kind of introduced what entrepreneurship is. We've talked about some some different characteristics, but now let's look at like what allows entrepreneurship to thrive kind of in an economic standpoint. So we're going to kind of look at a big picture item of where entrepreneurship thrives or what kind of situations are allowing it. So here is a GDP per capita. It's a visualization. What do you notice? So this is from the World Bank. What do you notice? You can either raise your hand or put it in the chat. What are you noticing? Africa looks different, discrepancies. Paul? Hope you're on mute. Paul, you're on mute.
I'm noticing that the Western countries are their per capita GDP appears to be a lot higher than those of say sub-Saharan Africa, India, and looks like
South America.
yeah, pretty much that those countries, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So there is a lot of differences, and it's kind of if you're a big FTE fan, which I am, there's a really great, is capitalism good for the poor? And so we're going to kind of be drawing on some of those ideas, thinking about entrepreneurship and what sort of things are even allowing for entrepreneurship to exist. Because this is super important when we're thinking about how can it even thrive or how can it even start up? So, economic institutions are incredibly, incredibly important because these are the established behavior practice patterns. So, these are kind of the rules of the game, as Douglas North, Nobel laureate and economic historian, he talks about them being the rules of the game. And I kind of think about the rules of the game as when we think about your classrooms. So, if you think about your classroom as its own little mini economy, you have different rules in your classroom than your peers, right? Than your colleagues. And y'all are probably way more strict than your colleagues, right? But doesn't it change the way that the students behave in your classroom? Give me maybe a nod or yeah, I have noticed my students behave differently. Or, they are, there's things like that. I know that in my classroom, I have students, oh, sorry, clicking through. I have students that will skip my class because I don't take attendance and they don't skip other people's classes, right? So these institutions are really important because they set the rules and they set the ways that people are going to behave and the choices that people the choices that people make. So economic institutions can be formal and informal. So formal institutions, constitutions, laws, things like that. We have some formal institutions set up the rules of the game with FTE, right? What are some of those formal institutions that we have set up here at FTE for this Zoom meeting today? What are the formal rules?
Cameras on.
Camera on, be on time, right?
Be on time.
Participate.
Participate.
Yeah, cameras
Yep,
on.
have your video on.
Yeah.
Right, chat, do those sort of things.
Join, use the Google Slides and join peer deck.
You had to sign up in advance and you have to do a survey at the end.
Oh, yeah, right. It's
have rules. I mean, it's
Yeah,
just
so there's
normal
there's rules that we are set up. Now there's informal rules too, or informal institutions, and those are not necessarily like formally codified or whatnot, but they change the expectation of behavior. Did Lisa have to say nobody can call each other a dum-dum? Right? It's kind of an informal rule. If you've ever like had a weird rule and somewhere you're like, oh, it's obviously because somebody broke that rule, where it was an informal rule that got broken that maybe needed to make a formal rule. Do we all have that student that you can think in your head? You're like, yeah, this is the Doug rule or whatever it is. Yeah, but these institutions are incredibly important. And a lot of times the informal rules will maybe dictate behaviors more than formal rules because it's kind of this societal thing or this cultural thing, and that really drives how people make decisions. And so formal laws are also kind of cumbersome in the fact that they have to change. It takes a long process to change them. So all these sort of things to give you the background of this, okay? We all know lots of us probably know what incentives are, but they're rewards and punishments for the behaviors. And we talk about how economics and economists say that people respond to behaviors in predictable ways. Now, I understand that people maybe don't believe this. However, I would argue that, if somebody's still not behaving the way you want them to, it's maybe that their incentives just you haven't met them, right? So there's internal and external cues. You can see their behavior, but you can't see their costs and benefits inside them. So I used to get really upset when my students would skip my class when I was in grad school and I was kind of teaching for the first time. I'd be like, why are people skipping my class? It's so great. They need this information, right? But I wasn't sure I didn't fully grasp all their costs and their benefits. But if I change the incentives, if I change them, they could do that. Now, what if I gave every student $10 every time they came to class? Do you think a lot of
Yes,
students would show up?
of
I bet they
course.
would. Do you think there'd be any reason for someone to skip even for $10?
Yes.
Absolutely, right? What if I made it $1 million, right? So we can change the way that people behave with what behaves exactly how it is, but we have a general idea of what they're going to do. So incentives shape the choices that you make, right? If I offered that $10 of that $1,000 per class, I mean, right? FTE is offering you a stipend to be here. Would you be here just, maybe some of you would be here just for fun, but others are here because the stipend is a nice incentive. But they shape your choices. They create observable patterns of economic decisions, right? And so what we want to think about is that economic institutions don't operate independently. Okay. And we are finding this out. I think that they're very driven by political and governmental institutions. So here's the ones that we're going to focus on. Okay. We're going to focus on these 4 institutions: open markets, property rights, the rule of law, and entrepreneurship. So these 4 things are kind of the cornerstone to discussing um, to discussing economic freedom, which then correlates to how capitalistic a society is. So let's kind of break down each of these. And I want to talk, you may have talked about these in general in your economics classes, but I want to put the focus though on how these institutions affect entrepreneurship and the importance of them in entrepreneurship. Okay. So our first one is the open markets, institutions governing voluntary exchange. Why are open markets so important for entrepreneurs? I mean, this is kind of a fundamental, you have to have open markets, right? But why? You can
Why?
raise your
Oh,
hand,
sorry.
I'll look at the chat. Low barriers to entry, to have an audience to sell to.
The more you can have out there, the more you can have your product go out.
They can foster trade, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Could you imagine not even being allowed to
Like a closed economy versus open economy. So yeah.
Yeah, you couldn't even start a business, right? Paul, what were you going to say?
Yeah, think of North Korea. I mean, definitely, that's much
I was
trade
going to
going on there,
mention
right?
freedom of choice. When you have voluntary exchange, both parties get what they want through voluntary exchange.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really big important thing. So first of all, if you come up, so in the last activity or the 2 activities ago when we were going through those different industries, right? And we were saying what's a problem in there? So what could we solve the problem? If you didn't have an open market, you couldn't even attempt to solve those problems. And then expanding this is that if you don't have open markets, you don't get to sell to people. All right. And just thinking about where you're at, but on a global level. So open markets are incredibly important. How about property rights? Why? So property rights are the institutions governing ownership and the use of private property. And it includes your ideas. It includes your stuff. And I will argue, so I normally get to be in my opinion corner. Since I'm virtually, I'll be in my like Zoom corner. The most important property right is the right to yourself, right? The right to trade your time and your labor and your expertise and your ideas in the way that you want. So I would argue that yourself is the most important. But why is property rights so important to entrepreneurs? You can go ahead and raise your hand. Eric?
I was gonna say, to be an entrepreneur, it takes an awful lot of risk, and you're putting a lot up front. If you don't have an assurance that you're going to be able to reap the benefits of it through property rights, then what would be the incentive to actually take that risk in the first place?
Yeah, why do it? One of my jobs, I do research. So I always give my students the example of like, what if I was doing this research and I was doing all this stuff, and then Valerie, I'm just going to pick on you, Valerie, whited out my name and then just put Valerie on there. What incentive is there for me to do that? Right? What incentive would there be for me to do that? Or what if somebody could just walk into my shop and just steal stuff, right? Is it Krizia? Krizia?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Krizzy?
Yeah, it's crazy. One of the things that I say, it's also the ability to actually run that business and not be beholden to anybody else. So for instance, if you're running, let's say, auto shop business, by you owning that property, the government does own you, but the government won't own that like nobody can take it away from you because
Yeah.
it's yours.
Without due
can't just
process.
say- exactly. They can't just
Yeah.
say, oh yeah, it's mine now.
Yeah. And that's a really important thing. We'll talk about some instances where this is not, where these are violated. The rule of law. So these are institutions governing the extent and limits of authority and privilege. And this, I think, kind of piggybacks off of property rights, is that if you don't have the rule of law with property rights, so maybe maybe I have the right to my stuff, but Valerie can just white out my name and put her name on it. And then she doesn't get in trouble, right? She doesn't have that sort of thing. And so the rule of law is really important. I think right now we're facing a lot of uncertainty, and the rule of law is what makes it so I know what's going to happen if I behave this way. And so that's really important. Businesses like certainty, businesses like to know those sort of things. And finally, entrepreneurship is the institutions governing risks and rewards of organization and resources. And I'm going to make the grand, I guess, argument that entrepreneurship can only exist and thrive where there are open markets, property rights, especially the right to yourself, and the rule of law. Without those, there's no incentive for entrepreneurship. And so, from a completely opposite example, where we go to North Korea, people in North Korea, young students in North Korea, aren't learning about entrepreneurship. They are not trying to be entrepreneurs. They are not going to school to learn about entrepreneurship, because entrepreneurship doesn't exist because the institutions will never allow for entrepreneurship. So let's kind of talk through a little bit in each one. So open markets, we've gone through these sort of things. I don't want to go through it too detailed, unless you all have questions. So please stop me if you have questions. But I think we kind of have a gist of where the markets are, and you'll get all these slides, so you'll get everything on here.
Go back one slide.
Oh yeah, yep.
Oh, why do you have Brazil on closed markets? Just out of curiosity.
Oh, well, we'll talk about that. So, so what I want to keep in mind is that all of these economic institutions are all along a spectrum. Okay, so the one end is open markets, and the complete opposite side is closed markets. And so generally, based on the rules, they fit somewhere along that. Brazil is tending to be in the more of a closed market because they have high tariffs and they have very few trade agreements. So they actually do have quite closed markets. Now, I am not necessarily saying that it is completely closed or that it is impossible there, but it's to kind of give you an idea of the spectrum that they go on a range.
So it's government, not the people necessarily. I saw plenty of entrepreneurs in Cuba, not all of them legal, but plenty of entrepreneurs.
That's an interesting thing. I mean, I was in Cuba and I saw a lot of, we talk about how they don't know about markets and supply and demand, but they understand markets probably better than my college students because they live them, right? But when we're talking about markets, we do need to talk about kind of formal markets as far as what's being measured. So the Fraser Institute does a really great Freedom of the World Index, which you'll get to explore a little bit. And so there is a rating on that, and they give you why they're on there. And Brazil does tend to be lower on that spectrum, mainly because of their trade. And some of their other restrictions. Some of the other examples of restrictions to open markets may not be on the global side, but it could be really high restrictions on, like, you have to ask permission to open up a restaurant, or you have you have heavy licensing. There's always really great discussions about licensing in cosmetology areas. Right, we understand, like, there's some, I think in Nebraska we have the highest number of hours that you have to have a license. And this is just to cut hair, right? And so those sort of things prohibit open markets, and it's a trade-off. I would argue that the US's open market score will be lowering in the next couple years. So all these data is lagged by 2 years, so we don't know exactly what is happening. But I mean, with all the tariffs and all these trade negotiations, I think we're gonna see that sort of thing. But in general, it's a spectrum. Does that make sense? Okay. Property rights, we talked about that briefly, just to give a formal definition, right? And I just, those sort of things, they must be clearly defined. And that's a really important thing. So clearly defined property rights and allowing the property to be used kind of in the way that they want to transfer it. Sorry, I'm just looking at it. I'm blanking on what time I have too, so I know when to stop. I have till 45. Okay, we're good. And again, this is on a spectrum of individual property rights to state-owned property. And these countries will fit along that spectrum somewhere. It's almost like it's actually like getting a score out of 10. So it's almost like a percentage. So an example of state-owned resources. So these are pictures that I took. These are my own iPhone pictures in Cuba. Cuba is absolutely an example of state-owned resources, and it halts a lot of production. So this is in Vinales, the one with there's literally ox there, and we went to a tobacco farm, and people make about $25 a month is kind of the average pay, and the government owns 90% of the tobacco plant, and so you don't have the rights to do anything with it. And so there's a lot of disincentives there to be in agriculture because it takes a lot of work, but they don't get a lot of rewards for it. Our bus driver, he was actually, we didn't realize this until the end, but he was a trained economist. And he left the university I don't know if he was in Havana, but one of the universities in Cuba. And he left it because he would make more money driving a bus. So it's an example of these state-owned resources that kind of halts that. In Cuba, the government owns everything. And so what happened is during the revolution, there was people that had these spaces, and they would rent them out to people. And the government just said, nope, the people who are in them get to have it. And it completely threw the whole thing in disarray. And so you can see that in Havana, this is the picture right here with the manhole just kind of dug out. It doesn't look super nice because, again, who owns those resources? So what's the incentive to make that look nice? Oftentimes I use the example of your high school bathroom. Does anyone have like pleasant vibes of their the high school bathrooms? Probably not. They look really gross, right? And there's no incentive for people to clean that up, to take care of it, because it's not their property. Now, if you think back to your houses, I bet your houses look great. I bet your houses don't have toilet paper all over the floor. I bet they don't have graffiti. I bet they aren't, drawn on. And so those sort of things, when you're thinking about it, are kind of things to think about when you're thinking about state-owned resources. There's no incentive to maintain it. Rule of law. Yeah, yep. Tragedy of the commons. Thank you, Jana. The rule of law is really important. So on the one end, you have rule of law where everything is kind of laid out. You have all the rules. If I do this, this will happen. Those sort of things. Enforcement. It's very there's not uncertainty. The rule of man would be kind of the complete opposite side. And that would be that this person in charge that gets to dictate rules at their whim. And can you see there's a lot of it like that? Just it's fearful, right? I don't know what kind of a mood this person's in. Could you imagine if your high schools were run by the rule of man and it just was up to your principal, what he or she was feeling that day of, oh, this person can ditch, this person can't, this person's going to get, suspended for, breaking dress code. Like it would just be very volatile. Can you imagine like how awful? Not a great learning experience, I would imagine. Right. And so if I'm sure you've all seen this, anyone unfamiliar? This is probably a pretty quintessential one.
Oh, yeah,
This is
North Korea, yeah.
yeah, North and South Korea looking at from space and with the light pollution. And so you can see the difference in the rule of law versus the rule of man. Just as an example. Melissa, you said living that. Are you talking about are we talking about a principle? We don't have to talk about that. Oh, there we go. All right. So remember this. So we're thinking about this, and it looks like, all these countries are just kind of, there's a lot of discrepancy. But once you get to talking about and you start doing some more economic analysis and looking at the data, there's a big discrepancy, not just on their incomes, but it's really about the economic institutions that are within those areas. And so economic growth is incredibly important because it's responsible for increasing people's standard of living. So economic growth is the key to reducing poverty. And research has shown that economic growth changes or reduces poverty by about 80%, and that redistribution of wealth only accounts for about 20%. And I think about this economic growth as like if you had somebody who was very unhealthy and they had high cholesterol and heart issues and high blood pressure and all these sort of things, right? If we were to just give them medicine, would they be fine? Well, maybe a bit would be helped, or some things would be helped. But ultimately, the way to make somebody healthier is to maybe combine medicine plus a lifestyle change, right? And so that's kind of what I think about with when we're thinking about poverty. So if we just gave, Venezuela or North Korea $20 billion, would that help them? I mean, maybe, but they're still in this issue where they wouldn't be able to thrive beyond that. So we have to change the economic institutions. We have to tweak those sort of things to allow for economic growth to even happen, right? Yeah, you need the skills, you need the infrastructure, you need incentives to even allow for people to do that. Okay. So historically, countries that protect and support economic institutions have more innovation, more entrepreneurship, and ultimately more wealth. And this is kind of the economic like placeholder of the entrepreneur in history, is that the entrepreneur is so important because it allows for innovation. So now we have to allow for the entrepreneurs to thrive. Okay. And so the key to that is those economic institutions. So nations that encourage it lead to that economic growth and rising standard of living. So questions for you: is entrepreneurship risky? You can raise your hand. I'll look at the chat. Yes, 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 yes. I see that. And really, we shouldn't be just talking about entrepreneurship as risky, because even non-entrepreneurs face a lot of risk. Would we all agree? I mean, like if you're working even at, Gallup or Google or at Union Pacific, right? They all face a lot of risk. Entrepreneurs face maybe some different type of risk. Timothy?
Well, I'm just curious. I think you're starting to answer the question about what risk means for entrepreneurships, because there's extreme risk, but not all entrepreneurs are extreme risk takers, right?
Yeah.
Everyone has their own level of risk they're willing to take, where they say, this is where I turn around and I try something else.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, there's definitely a lot of nuances to talk about risk. I generally just talk about risk as kind of a spectrum of risk, right? How willing are you to take on risk? So in that survey that self-assessment that you all did, I'm very risk averse, right? I don't like a lot of risk, but am I taking risks? Yeah, I do take some risks. And so a lot of it's that personal level. Entrepreneurs, they even, I would say within a range of entrepreneurship, they take different types of risks. I mean, you see if you, I'm a big Shark Tank fan. So you'll see those people that are like, I put $250,000 and I took out a second mortgage on my house, right? They took a huge risk on that. While other people will be like, oh, you know, I just built small, I took very little risk. So I think that it goes kind of where we're thinking. Everything inherently has risk, but entrepreneurs do have to take a risk, right? They don't necessarily have the same safety nets that a lot of other jobs and careers have. So if it's risky, why would you want to be an entrepreneur and to risk potentially lose everything? So why would somebody even why would anyone even want to take on that risk with the fact that they could lose their house, their, 250,000 plus? Why would you do that? They like to be a boss. There's the possibility of high
Risk.
rewards.
Yeah.
What?
I was gonna say risk versus rewards.
Yeah, so there's a chance at a high reward, right? Those sort of things. And so the idea though is that what do you think about institutions? Like do you think they increase or reduce some of that risk or uncertainty? So how do the institutions affect risk for an entrepreneur?
Well,
raise your hand. Oh, yep.
Depending on the scope of the problem, the institution would solve that for the entrepreneur.
What do you mean?
Well, all the different, so if it were a rule of law and that institution addressed my particular rule that impacted my business, then it would benefit. But if it didn't, if I needed to have a rule of law addressed and there was no institution to, keep a parameter around it, it would be less successful. So all the different types of businesses that there are, or, entrepreneurial opportunities, depending on what could be the placeholders around them to shore them up and have them be successful.
Yeah. Eric, what were you going to say?
I'm just going to say institutions, I think the goal should be to minimize risk. Like you can't get rid of it, but to just try to mitigate it in whatever ways possible, by hopefully having the rule of law and those types of things.
Yeah, so you're suggesting that it decreases risk and it decreases that uncertainty. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, however possible. Yeah.
Yeah. Is it Tanvir?
Depends on the types of institutions. I think it depends on the types of institutions. If you have like a government that wants to promote something, let's say green technology, and they're providing subsidies for it, I think the risk is different in that case. If you have
go back to your institution. Go back to your institution. So that allowing subsidies it's not open markets, it's not property rights, it's not rule of law, right? So it's not to say that you're incorrect, that the government doesn't play a role in doing that, but I want to focus just on the economic institutions. So how do those institutions being protected or not affect your willingness to take risk or the uncertainty?
Well, it greatly affects it.
Yeah. Tanvir, what were you going to say?
Okay, I would like to just point out, even like contract enforcement, if I'm selling something to you and if you don't paying me or you basically don't follow up, with your end, then I can take you to court and whatever it might be.
What institutions are enacted there? What are we thinking about there?
So that's where the court,
so that'd be
rule of
law.
Rule of law.
Property rights.
Property rights.
Yeah. And that's really, really important, right? And same thing with the subsidies. I mean, you can tie those subsidies back to maybe some rule of law, because if you're under contract, if the government is offering you these subsidies, it's a contract, right? And so you're going back and forth there. If you're thinking about that, Valerie, I think there maybe is some rule of law being enacted there. But ultimately, entrepreneurs are willing to take on risk, but they want to take on calculated risks, right? They want to mitigate their losses. And so when you have institutions that don't mitigate those losses or mitigate those risks, it causes problems. So if you have something like the rule of man where it's just at their whim, I'm like, ugh, I'm not really interested in doing this. Like, this is not going to work out for me to do those sort of things. So that's why, it's so, so important to have this. Innovation is risky, but institutions are set up to allow for some risk taking and maybe to allow for entrepreneurs to take more calculated or more strategic risks rather than uncertain risks. And so the other thing is that entrepreneurs are willing to take those risks if they're allowed to keep the profit. That's something else where we're thinking about property rights, where they're going through that. Simona?
Yes, I was just thinking of that. You want to have an institution that protects your ideas, right? Because as an entrepreneur, you will have that idea, right? That you kind of break through the market. You also want to have an institution that foster you maybe access to funding and help you to, plan on a long-term your investment, right? Encourages long-term investment. And also you want to have an institution that has no corruption, because sometimes, and I came from a communist country, the law is very beautiful written, but it's everything is going underneath on the black market and corruption and things like that. So yes, absolutely, they are very important, and they should make it easier for you as an entrepreneur, right? Because you're the innovator, right? You're the shaker, right?
Absolutely. So the goal of this lesson is it's kind of light on some of the economics, because we're thinking that if you're teaching an entrepreneurship class, that this is to get the ideas of economics, but you can definitely take this and go deeper into the economic institutions, and you can go deeper into some of those economic concepts. And so this kind of ties back into the best and worst places to do business. So what does this heat map look like? Does it look like anything else you've seen today?
They could be overlaid on each other just
Yes.
about.
Which one?
The GDP per
GDP,
capita.
absolutely. Yeah. And if we had the economic freedom of the world and we looked at the economic institutions, we would even see an overlap there, because they are all very related to each other, and it all makes sense. So if you have countries that are not easy to do business, entrepreneurship's not going to thrive there. Economic growth is not going to happen there, right? It all needs to be in place to allow for it. Again, a joke is used loosely, but there are no Venezuelan students learning about entrepreneurship because the economic institutions it just won't even matter. There's nothing set up for them to succeed in that way. Here are the factors that make the ease of doing business, if you wanted to kind of look that up. But just kind of to close through this, what your students would be doing after this is they would be getting some examples of all the economic institutions, and they would be getting examples of businesses or situations that would align in each of those, and to talk about some of the challenges or some of the benefits of that. So every lesson is a full-blown lesson where it has like the introduction, the content. They are all generally interactive. Some have more of interaction than others, such as like the self-assessment study. And then they all have an assessment component that you can use in your classrooms in some capacity.